Sandra rode her bicycle through the quiet evening streets, her body aching with exhaustion from the day's work. She prayed silently that Alex's children would not give her a difficult night. Work had drained her completely, and all she longed for was a moment of rest. But Alex had called her earlier, pleading for her help. He had a late-night work trip and needed her to stay with his twins. Even though Sandra was tired, she agreed. She understood how hard things had been for him since losing his wife to cancer 2 years earlier. He had been raising the girls alone, balancing fatherhood with his demanding career. When she arrived at his house, Sandra dreaded the tension that always came when she was around the children. Alex welcomed her warmly into the living room, grateful for her presence. "You have no idea how much this means to me," he said as he embraced her before preparing to leave. Alex had not told the girls that Sandra would be coming. When he called them out, their reaction was exactly what Sandra had feared. "What is she doing here?" Priska, the older twin, questioned immediately, her small arms folded tightly across her chest. Bella, the younger twin, looked equally displeased. Alex explained that Sandra would be staying with them until he returned. The girls protested, saying they could take care of themselves without any help, but Alex was firm. He reminded them to behave. He hugged them tightly before leaving, trusting Sandra to watch over them. As soon as he left, the girls turned cold. They switched on the television and immersed themselves in cartoons, ignoring Sandra completely. She tried to bridge the silence, asking what they wanted for dinner and offering to make their favorite meal. You are not our mother," Bella snapped sharply, her words cutting deeply. They made it clear they were not interested in her cooking. Sandra felt the sting of rejection, but she also realized how much they still missed their mother. She had been dating Alex for 6 months, yet every effort she made to bond with the children had failed. Trying to stay calm, she retreated into the kitchen, only to be shocked at the mess that awaited her. Dirty dishes were piled high in the sink, trash was scattered across the counters, and the smell of neglect filled the air. Sandra sighed and got to work, scrubbing, washing, and cleaning for over an hour. By the time she finished, her back ached and her fingers were sore from the effort. When she returned to the living room, she found the girls gone. After searching the house, she discovered they had already retreated to their bedroom without saying a word. Sandra decided to gather her belongings from her bag, hoping to settle down quietly for the night. But when she opened it, she froze in horror. Her diary was torn into pieces. It felt as though her heart had been ripped apart. The diary was precious to her, filled with personal thoughts and memories she could never replace. Overcome with anger and despair, she went back to their room knowing they were pretending to be asleep. She confronted them for destroying her belongings and declared that she was leaving. Without waiting for their response, she stormed out of the house into the night. The sky was heavy with dark clouds. A strong wind blew across the street as the first drops of rain began to fall. Sandra placed her helmet back on, climbed onto her bicycle, and rode off into the storm. By the time she reached home, the drizzle had turned into a steady shower. She was wet and shivering, but her mind was even more unsettled. She could not stop thinking about her destroyed diary and the cruelty of the children. Their behavior had cut her deeply, and the pain stayed with her. Exhausted and overwhelmed, she called her best friend Mary to explain everything. "I'm so sorry to hear this," Mary sympathized with her and then added, "You shouldn't have left them alone." "I wouldn't be able to control my anger if I had stayed, and I can't tell Alex," Sandra replied. "I know how you feel. Are you sure they will be all right without you there?" Mary asked. "It's clear they don't want me." "They can take care of themselves tonight," Sandra said angrily. The rain intensified into a violent downpour with thunder and lightning. Sandra curled beneath her blanket, trembling with guilt and unease. Slowly, she drifted into a troubled sleep. Hours later, the shrill sound of her phone jolted her awake. Disoriented, she answered and found Mary on the line again. This time, Mary's voice was urgent as she explained that heavy flooding had struck several neighborhoods, including Alex's area. Sandra sat upright in bed, her heart pounding. Panic swept through her as she imagined the girls alone in the rising floodwaters. Without hesitation, Sandra rushed out of her house and sped off toward Alex's neighborhood. When she arrived, the sight broke her heart. The streets had turned into rushing rivers. Families huddled together, waiting for help while rescuers were already at the scene, trying to evacuate people trapped in their homes. At that moment, her phone rang. It was Alex, who had already heard the news. Sandra was scared to pick up, but when she eventually did, Alex asked if she was okay with the kids. Sandra wanted to lie, but she couldn't. "I'm sorry, Alex. I left your place angrily last night," she admitted. "What?" Alex shouted and hung up immediately. Sandra's chest tightened with guilt. She looked at the rescuers already wading into the flood with a boat, pulling out survivors. Without thinking, she rushed to join them. One of the rescuers stopped her from climbing in. "Two kids are in there without an adult." "I have to get in there," she explained, pointing to Alex's house. "This is dangerous for you." "We will make sure we get them out," they assured her, but Sandra could not ignore the guilt tearing at her heart. "It's my fault for leaving them. Please, I have to do whatever it takes to get there," she insisted. The rescuer finally agreed, and Sandra boarded a boat with them. She pointed toward Alex's house as the current pushed hard against them, the water rising higher by the minute. When they reached the house, Sandra broke through a window to gain entry. Inside, the devastation was immense. Sandra waded through the cold, murky flood, calling out desperately for the girls. "I'm sorry for leaving you guys. I'm not your mom, and I will never be. But please, all I want is your safety," Sandra cried out, fear consuming her. With no response, tears filled her eyes. She wept in regret, wondering how she would ever explain this to Alex. Then, faintly, she heard a voice. Priska was calling from the kitchen. Sandra rushed in, hope surging through her chest. To her relief, she found the girls huddled together on the kitchen countertop, trembling but alive. Relief washed over her. She climbed up to reach them, embracing them tightly as tears streamed down her cheeks. The girls admitted they were frightened. Sandra apologized for leaving them behind, promising she would never abandon them again. Soon, the rescuers arrived and were surprised to see Sandra already with the children. They quickly placed life jackets on the girls. Together, they made their way out of the flooded house and climbed back into the boat. Dozens of other boats were also rescuing families from rooftops and windows. When they finally reached dry ground, paramedics rushed to examine the children while Alex arrived at the scene. His face was pale with fear and anger. The moment he saw his daughters, relief washed over him, but when his eyes met Sandra's, disappointment quickly followed. "What could they have done that you decided to leave them alone overnight?" he asked, his voice trembling as emotions overcame him. He had been terrified of losing his children. "I'm so sorry. I wasn't thinking straight," Sandra apologized sincerely, tears streaming down her face. "I don't think this can work out," Alex said sadly, ending their relationship at that moment. He turned away from her and returned to the paramedics, who confirmed that the girls were safe. Alex embraced his children tightly, and they clung to him with equal desperation. Soon after, he drove them away, while Sandra stood by, watching with deep regret. The weight of that night crushed her, her anger, her decision to walk out, and the flood that had destroyed so much. Most of all, she thought about how it had ended her relationship with Alex. Yet, despite her pain, she was grateful the children were alive. Days passed, and Sandra tried to move on with her life. She didn't reach out to Alex or the kids again, admitting to herself that she wasn't fit to be their stepmother. Alex, on his part, got a new apartment and settled in with his daughters. He scolded them for the way they had treated Sandra, reminding them of the consequences of their actions. Though he felt sad for ending things with her, he believed he had no choice because of his children. One evening, Sandra returned from the office, weary but calmer than before. To her surprise, she found Priska and Bella standing at her doorstep. She froze in shock, staring at them. The girls looked nervous but determined. They apologized for what they had done that night and handed her a small gift box. Inside was a brand new diary. "We know this cannot bring back the damage we did to your precious diary. But please accept our apology," Priska said softly. Sandra smiled through tears as she accepted the gift. "Apology accepted," she said warmly, and she welcomed them inside her home. Curious, she asked how they had come up with the idea. The girls explained that their class teacher had suggested it after they told her what had happened. They also admitted that Alex didn't know about it. Sandra was both surprised and touched. Quickly, she moved into the kitchen to prepare a delicious meal. To her delight, the girls joined her, offering to help. They worked together, chopping vegetables and mixing ingredients, laughter beginning to replace the old tension. The bond Sandra thought was impossible was slowly forming before her eyes. As they were baking, the doorbell rang. Sandra wiped her hands and went to answer. When she opened the door, she found Alex standing there, holding a bouquet of flowers. His expression was softer than she had last seen it. "I'm sorry for reacting harshly that night," he said gently, handing her the bouquet. "I'm also sorry for leaving them that night," Sandra admitted, her voice full of sincerity. Then, without hesitation, they kissed deeply, their regrets softening in that moment of reconciliation. "About my kids," Alex began, but before he could finish, the girls came running toward him. "What are you doing here?" he asked in surprise, his voice filled with both confusion and relief. The girls giggled, and all of them laughed it off together before returning inside to finish cooking. That night, as the warm smell of food filled the kitchen and laughter echoed around the table, Sandra felt a sense of peace. The storm had tested her deeply, but it had also reminded her of the importance of love, patience, and responsibility. In the end, the bond she once thought impossible with the children had begun to take root, planting hope for a new beginning. The end.